Hello, my dear players. Today, I would like to talk about a more general topic. I don't know how long this will go on for, but I'd like to talk about the idea of power scaling within Naruto, specifically. And this can apply to other series somewhat. It depends because of the criticism I'm going to bring about it. This isn't really against power scalers, that would be clear. I don't think power scalers are doing anything wrong. Well, some specific ones might, but in general, I don't think they are. What I more mean is the scaling that happens within the story itself of Naruto. Because power scaling is something that any series that has conflict and expressing a fight and conflict expressed as battles has. It's inherent to it. Even if power scaling doesn't follow even if power scaling in that series doesn't follow the normal practical logic that a lot of other shows attempt to do, they are still doing power scaling to some extent. It depends. It's just how it is. Anytime a statement about a character's power is made, anytime a character fights another character and wins or loses for any particular reason, and anything like that. This is all essentially power scaling in a very basic sense. So any series that does those things is also doing power scaling. And so my specific problem with power scaling in Naruto is because in Shippuden, I don't think it's a problem in part 1, but in Shippuden, I think Kishimoto kind of gets mixed up with the things that he establishes a little bit, which creates a handful of these weird cases of characters where a lot of people disagree about what strength that they must be at. And I think this is because of this muddling that I think Kishimoto unintentionally does. An example of this is Jiraiya. Now, there's a lot of opinions about where Jiraiya scales in the verse. A lot of different opinions. A lot of people I've seen heavily disagree with each other about where he scales, who he could beat, who he cannot beat. And I'm not really going to stake a claim of where I think he is. But I think, you're going to probably see a bit where I think he is, what I'm about to say. But based on the feats that Jiraiya has in the series and a lot of the statements, Jiraiya is below Orochimaru. Pretty certain of that. And he's not like super, he is. He's fairly far below Orochimaru. Not like not like Orochimaru's in a different tier than him altogether. But there's based on what Orochimaru has shown to do, and what Jiraiya has been shown to do, there's a significant gap, with the only outlier to this being Jiraiya's fight with the 6 Paths of Pain, and even then, there's an argument you can make for Orochimaru doing better in that circumstance than Jiraiya did. There's an argument to be made there. And so, question comes up of why is it so muddled? Why is there muddling, and why would so many people maybe disagree with my statement there? I think because there's a very clear implication, I think, in the way Jiraiya was written and the way he was framed in a lot of different instances, in certain scenes, in certain interactions, that Jiraiya was supposed to be a lot more relative to Orochimaru. And that I think Orochimaru was still intended to be stronger overall, but that they were supposed to be a lot closer in power than they were actually depicted as, I think. There's not a lot of hard evidence that I can provide for this, but mostly just kind of the feel of like the way Jiraiya is presented as a character and the way Orochimaru is presented as a character that kind of provides to me this sense of Jiraiya feeling like Kishimoto intended of being like maybe like a notch, like a singular notch below Orochimaru, but in the way it's actually portrayed, as I say, he's like a number of notches, several notches below Orochimaru. And maybe a lot of people would disagree with me on that statement, but that's just the feeling I get from it. And I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that betrays this, is the fact that Jiraiya is noted to gotten like severely scarred by Naruto going into Four Tails mode and into the Four Tails cloak, and like talks about it like a pretty supremely dangerous thing for Naruto to be in relation. And then we see Orochimaru being like basically playing with Four-tailed Naruto. Like it's not like the biggest deal in the world. It's not really that big a deal to him. And he does recognize its strength at times, but overall you kind of get the sense that Orochimaru isn't worried at all about it, like Jiraiya was. Which kind of creates, which is, well, I think one of the biggest things that creates this disparity between them in practice, because it's feat comparisons like that that really show the difference between them, but I don't think that Kishimoto actually intended for that message to get across. I think it was just him muddling it up and getting carried away. Genuinely. I think that he wanted to put across to us that Four-tailed Naruto is very dangerous, but the only way he could think of at the time to convey that was by having Jiraiya refer to it as so dangerous to him, and him being scarred by it. But then when it came time for Orochimaru to fight it, he got carried away in making it a fun little encounter that he just genuinely did not think about what that actually implies about the difference between a Jiraiya and Orochimaru, resulting in practice, creating a power scaling gap between the two. I don't think that was actually his intention at all. But it's just how it played out, because just Kishimoto lacking foresight. I genuinely think that. I could be entirely wrong. I admit that, but that's just what it seems to me in a narrative sense. And not to say it's anyone's wrong for recognizing that disparity. I don't think anyone's wrong for doing it. The disparity is there. It's what Kishimoto wrote, for shit's sake. I just think that Kishimoto wasn't thinking when he did that, unironically. Another thing that I think kind of points to Jiraiya supposed to originally intending to be stronger than he ended up being depicted as, is in part 1 when he encounters Itachi and Kisame. Now, I know a lot of people like to use this interaction and kind of wank the hell out of Jiraiya with it, because like Kisame and Itachi seem like they're quote unquote scared and they back off. I don't think that even me, like taking my admittedly relatively headcanon kind of concept of how strong Jiraiya is supposed to be, even that version of Jiraiya is not winning a 1v2 Itachi Kisame. It just isn't working. That's not ever happening. But I don't think there's a reason. Yeah, not even winning, just like being fair. That's not a fair fight. I don't think that there's a reasonable take on Jiraiya's strength where he is as dangerous to them as Kisame seems to feel like he is. But I do think that the point of that scene at the time is to establish that Jiraiya is relative to Kisame and Itachi. That even if Kisame, like that, taking Itachi out of the picture, because Itachi has a very different situation going on. I think that if Kisame and Jiraiya were to fight, it would not, if in this, like, given what the take is, like, given how strong I think Jiraiya is supposed to be, not how he actually practically ends up being depicted, but how strong he's supposed to be, that if Jiraiya and Kisame were to fight, then Kisame has a real chance of losing. I don't necessarily think he would, but that it's a thing he would be, that he has a practical reason to be worried about losing. With Itachi there, he shouldn't, but I think you get my point. And now, to be clear, I don't think it's like the hugest thing in the world. I do think that Itachi, them choosing to retreat, and Itachi insisting on it, is genuine. It is just Itachi trying to make sure that Jiraiya doesn't get hurt, because, as we know, Itachi isn't a bad guy, and I think that was planned even at this point, honestly. So, yeah, I think that the reason why Itachi and Kisame retreat from the fight with Jiraiya is just because Itachi doesn't want Jiraiya to be hurt. I think that Itachi and Kisame, if Itachi really was evil, would have been able to take that. But I do think that Kisame's worry of Jiraiya is supposed to be a firm establishment that is how strong Sannin are in relation to the Akatsuki. I think. And the only reason why, and to be frank, like later on when we get the reveal of how badly Orochimaru got fondled by Itachi, I think that's mostly just an Itachi thing. I don't think that's the rest of the Akatsuki thing. I think that if Orochimaru went one-on-one with most of the, not all of them, but with like most of the Akatsuki, it would have went a lot better. Again, Kisame is another one where it's like, maybe he could pull a win, but Kisame is kind of a monster. It's kind of questionable to me. But everyone else, I don't think is clear-cut. Yeah, I think, with all that being said, I think it kind of establishes my point that, as I'll restate, Jiraiya was, I think, intended to be a lot closer to Orochimaru's strength than he ended up actually being depicted as. And the reason why there's such a disparity is simply because of Kishimoto not quite having a firm foresight on what certain events actually imply. And you can disagree with me if you like. It's just my take. Just how I felt reading the narrative. Now, another victim of this problem with Kishimoto's power scaling is Tobirama, I think. Tobirama is a lot harder because I don't have as firm of an idea of where Tobirama's intended scaling is as I do with Jiraiya. But I do think it's really funky. Tobirama's scaling is just really funky. Just with the circumstances of the information we have. Not thinking about his feats in the war arc, which are really important. They're very important. But just focusing on what we know of him before he died. And the reason why that's important is because, those who get reanimated do have a small debuff. They're not operating at full capacity. They're only operating... The implication, I think, is somewhere around 80 to 90% of their proper full power. And the way I interpret that is just... They just don't have the... how shall I say, like the chakra intensity, so to speak. Like if we said that if the water dragon jutsu is supposed to do 100 points of damage, then while they're reanimated, it only does 80 or 90 points of damage. That's really arbitrary, I know, but that's just kind of my interpretation of the debuff that the reanimations during the war arc have. Because of that, it can be hard to know. But because of that, we kind of need to have some more. We kind of need to have more information on what Tobirama was capable of before dying. But we don't know shit. Not really. Because we know. We have a lot of statements, and we have a lot of knowledge of things that happen. Like his battle, like him being a rival with Izuna. We know that. There's a problem with the rivalry with Izuna. We don't know shit about how strong Izuna actually is. We don't know. And even then, the time period during which he has a rivalry with Izuna, for all we know, is before his prime. For all we know. So we don't know how strong that is. And then, we have the circumstances of his death, which is, him being... In his first encounter, he has, I think it's an ambush in the first encounter, while he's, having, a talk with the second Raikage, and Tobirama managed to survive that first attack, but I think the implication is that he was a bit worse off for it, like he wasn't on his A game after the ambush, even though he managed to survive. And then there's the second attack, where we know that Tobirama died. This tells us nothing. We know that the squad... is a huge amount of people. There's a lot of people. It's like a couple dozen people that are all S rank. That's impressive. Most people going up against 20-something S rank ninja, that's bad. They're fucked. Screwed. The problem with that is that S rank ninja is a super fucking wide category of ninja. There's so many things. There's so, Zabuza while on the bridge is an S rank ninja, I think. And so the question is, amidst, comparing Tobirama to Minato, if Minato went up against 20-something Zabuzas, would he die to that? Would that be a horrible fight to him? It'd be somewhat rough. I don't think it's easy. But would it weaken him? Especially with backup. And would it be able to kill him later? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so we'd have to know more details on how strong all these S-rank ninja actually are. And we'd need to know more detail. We'd need to know more about their strategy, what setup they had, because it just tells us nothing. We do get some more information on Ginkaku and Ginkaku late in the war arc, because we see them reanimated and have powers and shit. But they're not that impressive. Not in comparison to the Kage. Not at all in comparison to the Kage. So it just kind of feels weird. And it leads to a lot of people, talking very negatively about Tobirama. Which I don't necessarily think, which it's kind of earned, just because of the way Kishimoto has written these circumstances. It's a little earned because of Kishimoto. But then the other problem is his feats in the war arc. are pretty, his feats and statements are pretty damn solid. Like, he puts in a lot of work. Not as much work as other people, granted, but he puts in a lot of fucking work. And shows off a lot of the myriad of crazy skills that he has. The problem, though, is that the main question of, like, how strong is Tobirama in comparison to the other Kage is really hard to get a firm answer to, even from his War Arc feats. Because, for one, Minato is working off of a pretty substantial buff of having Kurama, having the other half of Kurama. And Hashirama, we already know, is ludicrous. So it just kind of creates this confusion where, even though Tobirama, I think, does really well in the War Arc, we don't really know how well he compares. Especially because we don't know how achievable a lot of the things that he does in the War Arc would be for his alive self. Because, you know, reanimations have a lot of buffs surrounding their stamina and chakra usage. So we don't really know how doable a lot of the things that he does in the War Arc are when he was alive. It just leads to a lot of questions that would probably be answered if, I don't know, in Boruto we actually got like a flashback fight with Tobirama and the S-Rank Ninja, so we actually see how that went. That would probably reveal a lot. Or if we got some more information on other people that Force managed to kill, that'd be great. But yeah, it's just a lot of confusions where I think this is like not as near as cemented as I think the Jiraiya thing is. But I think that Tobirama is intended to be slightly stronger than Minato, and to have a bit more versatility in their jutsus. I don't know why it took me so long to think of that. But that Minato, even ideal circumstances like that, Minato is overall faster in both his teleporting and physical speed and reflexes. I think that's kind of the scaling. I think that's the intended scaling that Kishimoto was attempting to convey. But because of how weird the circumstances are of everything we see of Tobirama and everything we hear about Tobirama, I think it's actually really hard to have a firm idea of what he's supposed to be like. And again, I don't blame anyone who has a different take on it, mostly because, like I said, the information's weird. So, if you think he's stronger or weaker than what I just said, I don't blame you. But I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is how the narrative feels to me. And how I think Kishimoto and Shippuden kind of just fumbled his way through scaling a few times. I think there's a few other examples, but this video is long enough and I think it conveys my point. So, I'll end this video here. Please like, comment, and if you guys want to see me talk about scaling more, let me know. Talk to you later. Bye.